Hello and welcome to our session today. We are excited to have you here as part of the Pathlock Innovation Series. Our presenter right now is from version 1. Presentation today is from Graham Smith. He's the head of PeopleSoft Technology at version 1. This presentation today will be 5 things you can do today to secure your PeopleSoft system.
Hello and welcome to you all who have joined this presentation live. Thank you for finding the time in your busy schedules to be with us today. And for those watching on playback, welcome to you as well. And so, as Stephanie has said, this is 5 things you can do today to secure your PeopleSoft system. And by no means suggesting that your PeopleSoft system is insecure. These are just 5 things that I've come from my own experience that I think are maybe useful to all PeopleSoft customers. And if you have these 5 things already implemented, you can pat yourself on the back and, well, maybe next time we'll have another 5 things. So this is part of the Pathlock Innovation Series, and version 1 is proud to be a partner of Pathlock's and thrilled to be part of this innovation series, sharing with PeopleSoft customers things that you might find of value. My name is Graham Smith. I'm head of PeopleSoft Technology at version 1. And I've got over 20 years experience helping PeopleSoft customers get the most out of their investment and help to optimize their PeopleSoft system, including securing their PeopleSoft systems. I'm an Oracle ACE director and privileged to be part of the wonderful PeopleSoft community and ecosystem around the world. I'm a regular presenter at what was Open World and the All India Oracle User Group meetings, Sangam and Yatra, UK Oracle User Group meetings, and the Innovation Series of Pathlock. I'm a regular presenter at those. I'm actually speaking to you today from United Kingdom. I'm based in Oxford. This is not how Oxford looks at the moment. That's a very autumnal day. That's fall for Americans on the call. Right now it's very, very green and warm, and we're just about to hit a heat wave where our temperature, I think, might go above 40 degrees in the next few days. So yeah, it's hot. So it's my great privilege to bring to you today just my thoughts on 5 things to secure your PeopleSoft system. I work for version 1. I head up the technology team within version 1. That's all the infrastructure analysts, PS admins, DBAs, cloud engineering, anything to do with technology around PeopleSoft. And our organization has over 3,000 staff providing IT services across the world. And our PeopleSoft practice has about 50 people in it, covering HR, finance, ELM, campus, and we're involved in all the usual PeopleSoft upgrades, implementations, migrations to cloud, and all that good stuff. So, safe harbor statement. Oracle always has these at the beginning, and I've got one as well. And it's everything I tell you in this presentation is correct, unless found to be wrong. If you try something I tell you about here in this presentation and it breaks your PeopleSoft system, then let's hope it broke your development system before you migrated the change to production. So it's just saying, look, take this for what it is. It's information. Go through your usual build, test, fix, test, deploy process if you take on board and to decide to implement anything that I share with you today. Safe harbor. So what is tip number 1 to secure your PeopleSoft system? We're going to start something really obvious, something that I'm sure everybody on this call and others have done already, and that is to secure the PeopleSoft system accounts. What do I mean by that? Well, hands up those who know what this is. Well, it's a Connect ID, and the default Connect ID for all PeopleSoft systems is people. Do you know what the password is? Well, let's hope that your organization has changed the password from the default, and I'm not giving anything away there. That's all public kind of knowledge. It's the password for the Connect ID is people with a 1. That's the default. Make sure that you've changed it. So in fact, not just change the password, don't use the Connect ID people, because if you do, well, you're giving away half the information to any potential hacker about what your credentials are to get into your PeopleSoft system. And there are other system accounts. There's Access ID. That's a very high permission database user. It's dedicated to running the application and batch server layers. Don't give it to end users. This is a system account. If you give it to end users and they log in with it, they'll have very high permissions and you won't know who's logged in. So if you're on Oracle or SQL Server databases, make sure you audit the logins by the access ID that come from a target other than your database servers, your app servers, or your batch servers. You need to know if anybody's logging in with that, so audit it. If your users need kind of high permission access, create a named account for them, which is, of course, is a golden rule of all security anyway. You shouldn't have human beings logging in with system accounts. So there's Connect ID, that's a very low permission database user. Not quite as low as some people think. I'll talk about that in a moment. PT Web Server, again, very low permission. If you log in with a PT Web Server account, shouldn't have access to anything. All it's used for is to retrieve the web profile. Make sure if you log in with that account, you can't go anywhere or do anything with that account. And similarly, the PeopleSoft account that you use to start the application and process scheduler domains, it does not need to have permissions to do anything other than the permission list needs to have that tick box tick that says it can start the application server. You don't need to give it any roles, permission lists. Make sure that is stays a low permission PeopleSoft user. There are other system accounts. There's Elasticsearch accounts, there's integration gateway accounts, there might be service accounts that you use for logging in and checking your batch server. I'll talk about those a bit later, but just some obvious things. Make sure that you've locked these down and you're auditing them. Audit logins, produce a daily or a weekly report of anybody that logs into this that perhaps shouldn't be logging in with it, i.e. is not part of your system infrastructure. And make sure you've locked down both the account name and the account password to be as encrypted as obscure as it possibly can be. And long is always better than quirky. Having a long password that's all alphabetic characters is more secure than a shorter password that's got question marks, shrieks, asterisks, numbers, and upper and lowercase characters. Because to a machine trying to hack, long passwords are always more difficult than shorter, obscure passwords. To a computer, the letter A is no more obscure than a question mark. So I said Connect ID wasn't quite as low permission as you think it is. If you log in, one of the things you do when you create the Connect ID in both the Oracle and the SQL Server platforms is you grant select on that for PeopleSoft Administrator. That's select on all the columns. But look at all the columns on this that you're granting. You're granting Oper ID, Oper which is the name of the operator, their MPLID, and their email address. You've just given away, if somebody logs in with that and retrieves all the data, you've just given away a whole ton of really valuable information about your usernames and their email IDs. So it's not quite as low permission as you think it is, so make sure it's secure. You could try, if you were running SQL Server, and I've not found a solution to this in Oracle, but if you're running SQL Server, and that's around 40+% of the PeopleSoft population around the world, you could try, instead of granting select on PeopleSoft Administrator, try granting select Oper ID on PeopleSoft Administrator. That way, if you log in with the People account or the Connect ID, then you can only see the Oper ID, you can't see anything else. Might that still work? Don't know. Try it, let me know if it works. So, thing number 2, PeopleSoft Administrator. Who are your PeopleSoft Administrator? So these are the users who log into your PeopleSoft system and they monitor, process monitor, they monitor integration broker, they might be monitoring performance monitor metrics, they might be troubleshooting journals that are stuck or payroll, running your payroll process. These are the super users in your organizations. Is this what they look like? Smart, clean, organized, get that Superman cape or Superwoman cape, or do they look like this? Well, look, I'm not making any judgment about how your super users look, but should they be super users? Who has the PeopleSoft Administrator role? And there is a role there in PeopleSoft that grants access to just about everything. Who has that role? Where are they in your thousands of users population within your organization? We work with some customers that literally have tens of thousands of users. how do you spot those that have got PeopleSoft Administrator? It's a little bit like Where's Wally? How do you find them? Well, here's a way. It's simple. You run a query that says select role user from PS role user table where role name equals PeopleSoft Administrator. And there may be other high permission roles that your organization has that grants high permission. So just add that to the list. Should they have access? If that returns 50 names, really? Should there be 50 people in your organization that have got PeopleSoft Administrator? Are they still authorized? Maybe they used to be PeopleSoft admins, but they've moved to a different role and maybe they shouldn't be anymore. In fact, you could argue nobody needs to have PeopleSoft Administrator. It's too broad access, and there should be more discrete access. Maybe users should have just PeopleSoft Administrator for the job that they're about to do, and then it should get removed. And there are systems that you can put in place to do that. But should they have access, and are they still authorized, are the two big questions we should be asking ourselves here. So should they have access? Well, maybe you have a control process where named individuals are granted PeopleSoft Administrator access. You can modify that query to say select all the operators from PS role user where the role name is PeopleSoft Administrator and the operator is not in one of my authorized users list. That way you find rogue users who have maybe given themselves that or have been given it inadvertently or deliberately. You can write this query, schedule the query to run every half an hour, have the results emailed to at least 2 people in different teams for accountability reasons, and that way you can audit PeopleSoft Administrator. And not just PeopleSoft Administrator, like I say, it could be other key roles that you have in your organization that you want to audit. But someone could grant themselves PeopleSoft Administrator. Oh, what's happened there? Is that? Yeah, someone could grant themselves PeopleSoft Administrator role and then remove it. So they or somebody would grant them it and then they go do something and then remove it to so they don't appear on that audit report. How do you protect against that? Well, all PeopleSoft systems have integration broker. You can turn on the user profile service operation, and whenever a change is made to someone's roles, it gets logged. And there it is there. That's one method you could use to do this. That's data that can't be messed around with. You could report off that.
Graham, I think that you went off presentation mode again.
Okay, somehow that's pausing. I don't know why. There, is that okay?
Yep, there you go.
Yep, so apologies about that. You could, I was just showing that you could use integration broker to audit the change because every add or remove of a role gets logged by integration broker if you've got the service operations enabled. Even if you're not doing anything with the service op, which is generally used to sync up roles with other PeopleSoft pillars like HR to finance or campus, then you still got this data to interrogate even if you're not routing it anywhere. You could also enable audit on PS role user. Yes, that's a customization, but it's a valuable one and it's low cost. It's a trivial customization that's very easy to reapply. And then any changes to the roles, you can interrogate the audit report and basically do whatever you like with that in terms of keeping a control and track of it. Something else you could consider is if you've got system accounts that are used to maybe administer integration broker or they're used to administer your batch operations. A lot of organizations have a user called PS batch or batch control, and then all the administrators would log in with PS batch in order to check on and schedule processes and perform kind of super user operations. How do you know who's logging in with that? Well, Pathlock have a product for PeopleSoft called Privileged User, and you can use that to prevent users logging in directly with those users. They first have to log in as themselves. So Graham Smith logs in, and then you switch user to the PS Batch user. And that way there's a full audit trail showing that Graham Smith logged into the system account, when they did it, and what did they access. So just look out for that. It's a little product that Pathlock have for PeopleSoft. Number 3, encrypt the WebLogic session cookie. So I'm going to get a bit techie here for a minute. So forgive me if you're not a techie, but if you are a techie, this may be interested. If you're not a techie, just write this one down and go clobber your techies afterwards and say, are we doing this? Even if you don't understand what I'm about to say. So whenever a user logs into PeopleSoft, a session ID is issued that uniquely identifies that user in WebLogic, in the web server. I've got it highlighted on the screen just here. My session cookie here is called FSCM047D, host 8000, portal PSJ session ID, and that gives away a lot of information about my system. It tells me that the host name is that, it's listening on port 8000, and this is the PeopleSoft session cookie. In a production system, you probably have a different cookie name. You're trying to mask that and obscure any meaning behind it. But the key thing here, and I'm pointing a big red arrow to it, on this encrypted PeopleSoft system, that cookie is not encrypted. That means all you have to do is have a HTTP listener listening out on your network, and you can snag that cookie. And if you have a PeopleSoft login and you log in with, so if I log in as Graham Smith into my system and I've snagged the session ID of a super user, all I need to do in my browser is replace my cookie value with their cookie value, and it will log me in as them. So make sure your WebLogic session cookies are encrypted, because by default they're not. You can see down this column here, all other cookies that are issued by PeopleSoft are encrypted, or by the load balancer are encrypted, except this one. And session state in load balancers are often pinned by this cookie name. Sometimes they're not, but often they are, and best to encrypt it. It's not by default. Here I'm just showing a screenshot of Wireshark. There are other layer 7 HTTP monitors, but here I've just used Wireshark to snag. I've been listening on the network, listening for a session logging into PeopleSoft, and I've got their session ID here, and I just paste that into my browser, log in after logging into PeopleSoft, and I will hijack their session, and they won't know it's happened, and I will actually become them for the duration of that session until they log out or until I log out. How do you encrypt the session cookie? Well, you just add a directive to WebLogic XML, cookie secure true, and it will encrypt all cookies going to the browser. Thing number 4, did you notice that data breach? Securing a system is one thing, detecting that there's been a data breach is another, and there are so many things you can do to monitor and protect against this. I'm just going to call out one that you can do today in PeopleSoft. Incidentally, this, I believe, requires a reboot of WebLogic. You can't do it today. You've got to have to schedule some downtime to make that happen. So this one you can do today. So someone just ran a query of all your employees or all your students or all your suppliers' bank details, and they've just exported them to Excel. Who did it? When did they do it? Where were they when they did it? Why did they do it? And is it a legitimate reason? These are all really good questions. Now, it might be that they're a HR administrator, and of course they would be exporting all their employee details to file. Would they? All their bank details, all their credit card details, all their personal addresses? Do we need to Excel? We need it in Excel. So someone needs to be holding that person to account. Why did you just do this? Now, probably vast majority of the time, it was perfectly innocent and not causing any harm, but that challenge might just cause them to think twice about why they did that, where that file now sits, because it's not in PeopleSoft anymore. You export to Excel, that's a file that you could send by email, you could drop into an insecure place, so that data is no longer secured by PeopleSoft, it's outside. So our aim here is to monitor for that happening. How do we do that? Well, you could enable PeopleSoft Performance Monitor. Some customers have this, nowhere near as many as I would like to see using it. It's free, you get it for free in terms of licensing. It's not free to run because you do have to have some infrastructure for it. But if you're running Performance Monitor and you're monitoring all the transactions, then you just do a select all the rows from PSPM trans hist table, where the trans defin ID is 411 and the context value contains a string that looks like that. And here I'm looking for a string of IC query name Excel URL, where my query name is all supplier bank details. I've considered that to be a sensitive query, and I want to know not who's run it, but who's exported it to Excel. I could also equally monitor who ran it as well. So this is This is only possible if you've got PeopleSoft Performance Monitor. If you don't have PeopleSoft Performance Monitor and you'd like to have it, we've implemented it for several clients over the years, and we'd love to help you. Let us know. But here's another way of doing it. You could enable WebLogic access logs. You probably have this enabled already. Well, you can just write a parser for that log, monitor the log file, and now I've just highlighted in red the same query being run that PeopleSoft Performance Monitor was looking for, and you can just find that in there. At the end of the day, just look through the log. If you find that string, you can contact the user who did it. Now, the challenge here is contact the user. Who was that? Don't know. I mean, you might be able to log their IP address in here, but the chances are the user will have come via a proxy or a load balancer and say, well, you won't have their original IP address. So that's not perfect, but at least you know it's been run. You could then go into the query logging in PeopleSoft and find out who ran it at that time. That's something you'd have to cross-reference that data. So how could what is it that you need to monitor here? You've got someone could run a. I think we've just lost the screen share again. Forgive me. Hopefully we're back again. What have we got to monitor? We've got to monitor PeopleSoft queries that have been run online, that have been exported to Excel or CSV. So someone in a browser has done this. You've also got to monitor, what if they scheduled this? So they've scheduled a PS query, it's in batch, and they've sent the file, the output of that query to file, or they've emailed it. You've got to monitor for that as well. The two techniques I've shown earlier don't pick up that. You've also got to monitor someone who runs the query, doesn't export it to Excel, but they just save the HTML page locally. That is not going to get tracked by anything. So that's a tricky one to monitor. What about two-tier query? Some customers still using two-tier query out there. Yeah, it still exists. I don't know if it's supported or not. Customers I know who use it say it works, but two-tier queries, do they get monitored? And then you've got custom app engines that might execute queries that, people code. This is a really complex set of query monitoring that you need to do. And the examples I've given earlier really only catch one and possibly two if you've got query administration monitoring enabled as well. And there's a lot to monitor. So you could, this is another example. You could also enable HTTP logging in your load balancer, and you're probably doing that already, but this doesn't catch most of the scenarios. Again, this isn't intended to be a sales pitch for Pathlock, but whether I was on an innovation series for Pathlock presenting or not, I would be saying this. Wherever I'd be speaking about controls and sensitive data, I'd be calling out a product that Pathlock have, which it's a firewall product for your application, and it monitors all of these things. Well worth investigating. Another thing that's worth investigating, if you happen to be running PeopleSoft on OCI, actually, or even if you're not running PeopleSoft on OCI, Oracle has a data safe product which allows deep auditing, monitoring of activities within your Oracle or SQL Server database. So I mentioned at the beginning of the session about Connect IDs. Who just logged into the Connect ID? Well, we can set up auditing within DataSafe that says, if a user just logged in with the Connect the Access ID, and they weren't an application server or a process scheduler, then trigger an immediate red alert to a number of users to go and investigate. Or we could just bump it on a report and show that at the end of the day. So DataSafe, very well worth looking at, even if you're not running PeopleSoft on OCI, and some customers are, in fact, many customers are these days. If you're not running PeopleSoft on OCI, you're on Amazon or you're on Azure or you're on-prem still with your PeopleSoft systems, OCI can still talk to your on-prem environments, and that's well worth looking at. Real-time alerting and scheduling of alerts against your Oracle or SQL Server database. And so we come to our final freebie in this session, because it is free, because you haven't had to pay for this webinar. I'm freely giving up my time and you've given up your time. It's all free. Don't give it away for free. this is some advice that we give regularly to customers. And here's an example of giving something away for free. Who has got Control J enabled on their production system? Well, most people lock it down, but if you have got it enabled because you think it's helpful, well, it is helpful, then what you're giving away is the tools release that you're currently on. You're giving away the database name for free. You're even giving away what the database is, whether it's Oracle or DB2 or SQL Server, and you're giving away the host name of your application server. I mean, no one could guess my host name down here. HCM 026C-LNXFT-1.compute. No one could guess that. So it's actually quite secure because no one could guess it. But there, I've just given it away for free. Now my hacker knows that they're looking for a database called HCM 026C. It's an Oracle database. It's on PeopleTools 85607. And so I haven't applied the 08 patch, which has got all the vulnerabilities patched in it. And there's my application server. They're 3/4 of the way there to hacking my system. So be ultra cautious about enabling Control J or Alt J in your PeopleSoft production system. But even if you've enabled this, you're still giving away some stuff for free. So here's another example. Process Monitor. Everyone's got access to Process Monitor. You just tab to the server list, and there you list all your process schedulers. Here's the host name of the process scheduler, HCM 026C-LNXFT-1. Okay, now I know the server name of the process scheduler. I'm halfway to, I'm halfway to hacking it. So just be really careful with that. How would you hide that in PeopleSoft? Use page and field configurator. Anyone monitoring this as an end user, they don't need to see the host name. They really don't. I mean, your system administrators might need to know the host name, but so use page and field configurator to, on this page, hide that column unless your user has a PeopleSoft administrator role, in which case display it because that could be useful to them and because they're administrator. So a really good use of page and field configurator is mask that freebie information to any hacker. Here's another freebie. This one's a bit more controversial. On the top of the screen there, I've got the default from a Cloud Manager provisioned PUM image, and it's using a site name of PeopleSoft 01. Well, I'm giving away that it's a PeopleSoft system. Well, hey, most of your users know that already, but most organizations use something like the database name or the environment name, usually the database name, in their URLs. So here in the lower image, I've got FSDev. That's my database name. It's useful to the user because they can look at the URL and see I'm in the dev system here, but actually you've just given away something for free. And if the development system is FSDev, then guess what the production system is? FSPRD. Guess what the UAT system is? FSUAT. You get my drift. You're giving it away for free. So unless there's some compelling reason why you need to have that in there, because you've got some JavaScript maybe grabbing it to understand the context of where you're at, neutralize that. Just leave it the default. Leave it as PeopleSoft 01 or leave it as PS, as you often find in standard builds. Don't give that one away for free. In fact, there was a great discussion quite a few years back now about this on the PS Admin.io community. The PS Admin.io guys and the whole community have a fantastic resource for anything to do with security around PeopleSoft. And this was a particular discussion about things you shouldn't do in PeopleTools, and one of them was give stuff away for free. And there's a great discussion there. That podcast is still out there. You can listen to it, and I recommend that to you as an interesting discussion. So we come to the end of our 5 things, but there's always a bonus, and here's a freebie bonus. Bonus sequel. Actively monitor failed logins. Did you know that there's a table in PeopleSoft called PSPT Login Audit? Every time somebody fails to log in, they get the password wrong, their row in this table has a failed logins incremented by 1. So I'm highlighting it on the screen there. You can see user gsmith2 has had 999 failed logins since they last successfully logged in on the 26th of June 23, 2 days ago. 999 failed logins. Is that alarming? Could a human have done that? Could Graham Smith have sat here attempting to log into PeopleSoft 999 times? I doubt it. he must have a machine trying to log in, trying to crack the password. And yes, I do. I have a machine. Yeah, it's actually called JMeter, and I've simulated 999 failed logins. So how do you monitor for this? You write a PeopleSoft query. You write a query that says select all the columns from PSPT login audit where failed logins is greater than some number. I've just selected 50 here. You could augment that by saying failed logins greater than 50 in the last 3 months or something, but actually you're interested in any time frame here, and anything higher than 50, that could be flagging up some early warning signs that someone is trying to illegally break into your system by guessing a password. Whenever a user successfully logs in and gets their password right, that failed logins drops to 0, so it resets. So just look out for that. If this is 1,000 logins and 999 logins and then suddenly drops to 0, it could be that Graham Smith, GSmith2 user, has legitimately logged in. That will reset all these failed logins to 0. No one will notice it. So regularly monitor this. I would put this on a PeopleSoft query and build some app engine to monitor this, and maybe every 10 minutes do this check. And if there are any rows there, get it out to your administrators to investigate. Because a quirk of this, a feature of this PT login table is if you get a successful login, that number resets. And that might disguise the fact that somebody is trying to break into your system. So they're the 6 things I have to offer. We could have spoken for another 16 hours and another 200 things that we could be talking about around security. And in fact, version 1 has a PeopleSoft security assessment service that we have, and it does over 200 individual checks against your PeopleSoft application. We produce a report highlighting risks, any actions that you might want to implement. We grade those risks and effort to fix. This is available for any version of PeopleSoft, any platform, any pillar of PeopleSoft, and we've done this for many users over the years. And come back and repeat those as well as their environments change. So that's just something I wanted to call to your attention. And that's my presentation over. I think I'm going to hand back to Stephanie now, and then maybe there's some other questions.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. Thank you for that presentation. Again, if you do have any questions, please add them now into the questions box, and we would be happy to answer those.
If after this session you think of any questions, then my email's on the screen now. I'd be more than happy to field those. And if you've got any general questions about PeopleSoft security, I encourage you, whether you're a PeopleSoft admin or a PeopleSoft developer, if you're interested in PeopleSoft security, I encourage you to join the PS Admin IO Slack channel. There's lots of great security discussions goes on there. So, but equally, I'm happy to take emails if you think after the fact, well, I wish I'd asked that question of Graham when we had him on the call. Or if you're watching this on playback, obviously you're watching it on demand, you can't ask questions real time. There's my email. Happy to receive any questions that you might have.
Yeah, we just had one question come in. Is there, during the transfer page, the key values are getting exposed in the URL. Is there any way we can hide those?
Great question.
Or the transfer component, sorry.
Yeah, great question. Short answer is no, I don't think you can, because the PeopleSoft application has been engineered to read those parameters off the URL line, and you'd have to completely re-engineer the component that was reading those off the URL and do it a different way. Maybe store them in global variables and then programmatically read those out of global variables to hide them off. There isn't really a way of doing that. That would be a great idea to post in the Oracle PeopleSoft community ideas space though. And if you did that, just post a link to the idea on the PS Admin IO security Slack channel and you'd get a few votes for it, because it's an interesting one, because if you can snag the URL, then maybe you're exposing some data. Equally, if your URLs are encrypted, then you're unlikely to be able to snag them. but they would get stored in log files. I think that's probably your concern.
And the comment from this person is you can change the parameters and access others' data.
You can if you've got permissions to see that data. The fundamentals of a component search is that you can only search for data that you have permissions to access. And the permissions are controlled by the component, not by anything in the URL. If it's being controlled by something in the URL and it's standard delivered PeopleSoft, I would get a P1 ticket logged with Oracle straight away because you've just found a vulnerability. But if it's something you've written in-house and it's custom build, then it sounds like you might not be applying security at the component level. If it's HR system, then it's row level security. And you shouldn't be able to view a employee that you don't have permissions to access, even if you put that into the URL. Shouldn't be able to. It's equally in financials. If you have business unit security or set ID security enabled, you shouldn't be able to see other business unit transactions if you don't have permissions to do so, even if you embedded it into the URL. If that's happening and it's delivered PeopleSoft, get a P1 ticket logged with Oracle, make it a security issue, flag it up straight away, because that's a bug.
Okay, great. Thank you for those answers and for those questions. Again, if you do have any questions, you can reach out to us at info@pathlock.com, or you can reach out to Graham at grahamsmith@version1.com, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. With that, I don't see any more questions coming in, so thank you so much to everyone for attending, and we hope to see you soon.